Jungkook sings a secret love song on stage. When Jimin realizes the lyrics are about him, he breaks down microphone loudly. The first note hits wrong, too raw, too naked, and Jimin knows something is about to break long before Jungkook opens his mouth. The arena lights dim into a hush that feels like a held breath, the kind that presses against the chest and refuses to let go. Jungkook stands alone at center stage, microphone trembling just enough to betray him, the glow from the sea of light sticks washing his face in violet and silver. Jimin is off to the side, half-shadowed near the monitors, fingers curled into the fabric of his jacket, his heart packing ahead of his thoughts. This wasn't on the set list. He knows the set list by muscle memory, by the ache in his calves and the rhythm in his bones. This is wrong. Jungkook inhales, and when he sings, the sound is not polished. It's honest in a way that scares people. I learned your name in the quiet, he sings, voice low, intimate, as if the crowd isn't there at all. I learned your pain by the way you smile. Jimin's breath stutters. The words land like a fingerprint pressed against glass, too specific, too close. He tells himself it's coincidence, that Jungkook has always written like this, that songs are mirrors and anyone can see themselves inside them. But then Jungkook looks to the left, just a fraction, and his gaze finds Jimin like a compass needle snapping north. The second verse is worse. I loved you before I knew it was dangerous, Jungkook sings, voice cracking on the last word. I loved you when loving you meant losing myself. A memory unspools without permission. A practice room at midnight, sweat and laughter, Jimin's head tipped back against the mirror as Jungkook reaches to wipe his cheek, thumb lingering a heartbeat too long. The rule they never spoke out loud, the one about distance, about lines you don't cross when cameras are always watching, burns like a brand. Jimin swallows hard, the taste of copper sharp on his tongue. The crowd roars, oblivious, the sound rising and falling like surf. They think this is art. They think this is fiction. Jungkook's hands are shaking now. He steadies himself by pressing his palm flat against his chest, right over his heart, and sings the bridge so softly the arena leans in without knowing why. If you hear this and you're afraid, he sings, know that I was afraid first. Jimin's vision blurs. He turns away, blinking, but the tears come anyway, hot, traitorous. He's always been the one who feels too much, who lets emotions bleed through his smile, who hides fear behind grace. He's learned how to perform vulnerability without giving it away. This is different. This is a door flung open. He stumbles back, away from the monitors, into the corridor that smells of cables and cold metal and someone's spilled coffee. The sound of Jungkook's voice follows him, threaded through the walls, and he slides down against a stack of cases, covering his mouth with his sleeve to muffle the sob that tears out of him. He presses his forehead to his knees, breath hitching, chest heaving like he's run too far too fast. Someone calls his name. Someone else's footsteps rush past. Jimin doesn't hear them. All he hears is the way Jungkook said afraid, like a confession, like an apology. Back on stage, Jungkook finishes the song without looking away from the empty space where Jimin stood. The last note dissolves into silence, so complete it feels unreal. Then the arena erupts, applause crashing like thunder. Jungkook bows, mechanical, and the lights blaze back to life. He forces a smile that doesn't reach his eyes and leaves the stage with his pulse hammering in his ears. He finds Jimin where he expects him, folded into himself like a secret. Jungkook drops to his knees without thinking, hands hovering, uncertain where to land. I'm sorry, he says, the words tumbling over each other. I didn't mean to, I couldn't keep it in anymore. Jimin looks up, eyes red, lashes clumped with tears, expression torn between anger and relief. You sang it, he whispers, in front of everyone. I know, Jungkook says. His voice is steady now, a strange calm settling in the aftermath of the storm. I was tired of pretending it wasn't real. Silence stretches between them, thick and fragile. Jimin wipes his cheeks with the heel of his hand, the motion sharp, almost angry. Do you know what you did to me? He asks. Do you know how long I've been trying not to hear those words in my head? Jungkook nods. Every day, he says, because I've been doing the same thing. Jimin laughs then, a broken sound that turns into another sob. He stands abruptly, packing, fingers dragging through his hair. "You don't get it," he says. "I've spent years learning how to hide, how to be careful, how to love without leaving evidence." Jungkook rises too, closing the distance but stopping short, respecting the line Jimin has drawn so many times before. "I know your habits," he says softly. "The way you line up your shoes, the way you hum when you're nervous, the way you look at the floor when you want to run." Jimin freezes. He exhales, slow, controlled, and when he looks at Jungkook again, something has shifted. The fear is still there, but so is a fragile, dangerous hope. "Why now?" Jimin asks. "Why tonight?" Jungkook considers the question, the answer heavy. "Because I was losing myself," he says. "Because loving you quietly started to feel like lying. Because I was afraid that if I didn't say it, I'd wake up one day and it would be too late." Jimin closes his eyes. The corridor hums with distant noise, the world continuing on without them. He thinks of the years between them, the glances that lingered too long, the touches that meant more than they should have, the nights spent staring at the ceiling and pretending sleep. He thinks of the song, of how it sounded like a promise and a wound all at once. He opens his eyes. "You didn't say my name," he says. Jungkook's lips curve into a sad smile. "I didn't need to," he says. "You heard it anyway." Jimin steps closer, the line between them dissolving. He reaches out, fingers brushing Jungkook's wrist, a tentative question. Jungkook stills, breath catching, and then Jimin's hand tightens, grounding them both. "I'm scared," Jimin admits. "I've always been scared." "So have I," Jungkook says, "but I don't want to be scared alone anymore." Jimin searches his face, reading the truth there, the vulnerability, the resolve, the love that has been hiding in plain sight. He nods once, small but decisive. "Then don't leave," he says. "Not tonight." Jungkook exhales, something unclenching in his chest. He steps closer, resting his forehead against Jimin's, the contact electric and tender. They stand like that for a moment, breathing each other in, the noise of the world fading to a dull echo. Outside, the crowd is still buzzing, replaying the song, dissecting the lyrics, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding behind the scenes. Inside the corridor, amid the scent of metal and sweat and tears, two hearts find the courage to stop hiding. When they finally pull apart, Jimin's eyes are still wet, but there's a steadiness there that wasn't before. "You sang your truth," he says. "Now let me learn how to live with it." Jungkook nods, a soft, relieved laugh escaping him. "Together," he says. Jimin squeezes his hand once, a promise sealed not by words, but by the courage it took to feel them. The hallway door slams shut behind them, and the sound echoes like a gunshot, sharp enough to make Jimin flinch. "Don't walk away from this," Jungkook snaps, his voice low but burning, the adrenaline from the stage still ripping through him. "Not after tonight." Jimin spins around, eyes blazing despite the tears that haven't fully dried. "You think I'm walking away?" he fires back. "You detonated my entire world in front of 50,000 people, and you think I can just stand still." Jungkook steps closer, too close, the heat between them crackling like exposed wire. "I sang the truth," he says. "I'm done shrinking myself so no one gets uncomfortable." Jimin laughs bitterly. "Uncomfortable," his laugh breaks. "Jungkook, people will tear this apart. They already are. They'll rewind every second, analyze every look. They'll come for you, for me, for us, whatever this is." "That's exactly why I did it," Jungkook says. "Because they already own everything else. I wasn't going to let them own this too." Jimin presses his palms to his face, dragging them down slowly as if trying to hold himself together by force. The corridor feels narrower now, the air thick, heavy with sweat and fear and something dangerously close to hope. "You don't understand what it's like to be me," he says quietly. "I've survived by being careful, by controlling the narrative, by never letting my heart get louder than my smile." Jungkook's jaw tightens. "And I've been watching you suffocate." The words hit harder than any shout. Jimin looks up sharply. "You think I didn't notice," he says. "The way you watched me, the way you flinched every time I stepped back, I noticed everything. I just didn't think you'd," his voice falters, "risk everything." I already lost everything once, Jungkook says, the confession spilling out raw and uncontrolled. When I thought you didn't feel the same, when I convinced myself that what I wanted was wrong. Jimin's breath catches. So you wrote a song instead, he asks, voice trembling. A love letter disguised as a confession. Yes, Jungkook says without hesitation. Because I needed you to hear it even if you pretended you didn't. Silence crashes between them, violent and fragile. Somewhere beyond the walls, staff shout instructions, the machinery of the show grinding on, oblivious to the earthquake in this narrow space. Jimin sinks onto a bench, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. When you sang that line about being afraid first, he whispers, I thought my chest would split open. I wanted to run, and I wanted to run to you, at the same time. Jungkook kneels in front of him again, unable to stay away. Look at me, he says softly. Jimin hesitates, then lifts his gaze. Jungkook's eyes are glassy, red-rimmed, stripped of every shield. I'm not asking you to be brave, Jungkook says. I'm asking you to be honest, just with me. Jimin swallows hard. I've loved you longer than I'll ever admit out loud, he says, each word shaking free like a confession torn from bone. I just didn't think loving you was something I was allowed to do. Jungkook's breath leaves him in a sharp exhale, half laugh, half sob. Then let's stop asking for permission. Before Jimin can answer, a manager's voice slices through the moment, tense and urgent. There you are. What the hell was that song? Jimin stiffens instantly, years of instinct snapping into place. Jungkook stands, shoulders squared, something defiant settling into his posture. It was mine, Jungkook says, and I chose to sing it. The manager's eyes flick between them, suspicion sharpening. Do you have any idea what kind of headlines this will create? Jimin opens his mouth, ready to deflect, to soften, to lie if he has to, but Jungkook speaks first. Let them talk, he says. I'm done pretending my feelings are fictional. The manager exhales sharply, running a hand through his hair. We'll talk about this later, he mutters before walking away, already tapping furiously on his phone. When the footsteps fade, Jimin turns to Jungkook, panic and awe colliding in his expression. You didn't even hesitate, he says. I won't anymore, Jungkook replies. Jimin stands slowly, closing the distance again. His voice drops, dangerous and intimate. If we do this, he says, there's no going back, no half-truths, no hiding behind choreography and smiles. Jungkook meets his gaze without flinching. Good. For a second, they just stare at each other, hearts pounding loud enough to drown out the noise of the building. Then Jimin reaches up and grips the front of Jungkook's shirt, not pulling him closer, just holding on like an anchor. You scared me tonight, Jimin admits. I know, Jungkook says. But you also made me feel seen, Jimin continues, voice cracking. For the first time in years. Jungkook covers Jimin's hand with his own, warm and steady. Then it was worth it. They don't kiss. They don't need to. The moment is heavier than that, charged with everything they've held back for too long. When they finally step apart, it's with the unspoken understanding that something irreversible has begun. As they walk back toward the lights, toward the waiting world, Jimin glances at Jungkook and murmurs, Next time you sing something like that, warn me. Jungkook smiles, small and dangerous. No, he says, next time I'll say your name. Jimin's heart stumbles, and he knows. Whatever comes after tonight will be louder, messier, and far more terrifying than silence ever was. The dressing room door clicks shut, and the silence inside is louder than the crowd ever was. Jimin drops onto the couch, hands shaking as he scrubs them over his face. This is insane, he mutters. This is completely insane. Jungkook doesn't sit. He paces instead, running a hand through his hair, energy crackling off him like static. Say you regret it, he challenges. Say you wish I hadn't sung it. Jimin looks up sharply. Don't put words in my mouth. Then say what you mean, Jungkook fires back. Because out there on that stage, I meant every word. Jimin stands abruptly, closing the distance in 3 quick steps. And what about the words you didn't sing? He demands. What about the ones that come after? What about tomorrow morning when this isn't poetic anymore, when it's headlines and think pieces and people deciding who we're allowed to love? Jungkook meets his gaze head-on. I'll still mean them. Jimin laughs, sharp and strained. You're so damn brave when it's your heart on the line, he says. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is to watch? Good, Jungkook snaps. Maybe it's time someone scared you into living. The words land hard. Jimin's chest rises and falls rapidly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You think I haven't been living? You think surviving doesn't count? I think surviving isn't enough for you, Jungkook says. Not anymore. Jimin turns away, pressing his palm flat against the mirror. His reflection looks fractured under the lights, eyes red, lips trembling, jaw clenched tight. You don't get to decide that for me, he says. I'm not deciding, Jungkook replies softly. I'm standing here, that's all. Jimin spins back around, standing here after setting everything on fire. Yes, Jungkook says, because sometimes the only way out is through. For a moment, Jimin looks like he might scream. Instead, he steps forward until they're inches apart, the air between them burning. If this destroys us, he says, voice shaking with fury and fear, I will never forgive you. Jungkook's expression softens, something painfully gentle slipping through the cracks. If this destroys us, he says, then at least we were real before we broke. Jimin's breath stutters. His hand lifts without permission, fingers brushing Jungkook's jaw, then freezing as if he's shocked himself. The contact is electric, undeniable. Don't touch me like that, Jimin whispers. Why? Jungkook asks quietly. Because it feels like the truth. Jimin's fingers curl, gripping tighter. Because if I let myself want this, he says, I don't know how to stop. Then don't, Jungkook murmurs. The knock on the door is violent, jarring. A staff member pokes their head in, eyes wide. You need to see this, now. They're ushered into a small media room where a screen is already playing clips from the performance. Comments scroll faster than Jimin can read. Shock, praise, speculation, accusations, love, hate, everything at once. They're saying it's about you, the staff member says carefully, glancing at Jimin. They're asking questions. Jimin's stomach drops. Already. Jungkook watches the screen, jaw set. Let them. Jimin turns to him sharply. You don't get to say that like it's easy. I know it's not, Jungkook says, but hiding hasn't been easy either. Another alert pops up. A headline flashes across the screen, bold and merciless. Jimin's hands curl into fists. This is happening too fast, he whispers. Jungkook steps closer, lowering his voice. Look at me, he says, not them. Jimin does reluctantly, and something inside him breaks open at the steadiness in Jungkook's eyes. I'm angry at you, he admits. And I'm grateful, and I'm terrified, all at the same time. Jungkook nods. I can live with that. Jimin exhales, long and shaky. I've spent my whole life controlling what people see, he says. I don't know who I am without that armor. Jungkook reaches out, stopping just short of touching him. Then let's find out, he says, slowly, together. Jimin closes the gap himself this time, resting his forehead against Jungkook's shoulder. His voice is muffled, fragile. You really chose me, he says, even knowing the cost. Jungkook's arms come around him, careful but firm. I choose you, he says, even now. Jimin's breath shudders as he clutches Jungkook's shirt, the dam finally breaking. He cries silently, shoulders shaking, and Jungkook holds him without trying to fix it, without asking him to be strong. Outside the room, the world is already rewriting their story. Inside, for the first time, Jimin lets himself believe he doesn't have to face it alone. The van doors slam shut, sealing them inside a moving pocket of tension that hums louder than the engine. Jimin sits rigid by the window, arms crossed tight over his chest, eyes fixed on the blur of city lights streaking past like they're trying to escape him. Jungkook sits opposite, knees bouncing, jaw clenched so hard it aches. No one speaks for a full minute, and that silence is more violent than any argument they've had. You're shaking, Jungkook finally says. Jimin doesn't look at him. I'm trying not to fall apart. That's not the same thing as being okay. Jimin exhales sharply and turns, eyes flashing. Stop analyzing me like a lyric. Jungkook flinches. I'm not. You are, Jimin cuts in. You always do this. You turn my fear into something poetic so you don't have to admit how reckless you were. Reckless, the word lands like a slap. Jungkook leans forward, voice low and tight. Say it again. Say reckless like I didn't spend years swallowing this so you could keep breathing. Jimin laughs, bitter and sharp. Don't make yourself a martyr. Then don't make me the villain, Jungkook snaps. The van hits a bump, jolting them closer. For a second their knees brush, and neither of them pulls away. You don't understand what tonight did to me, Jimin says, quieter now. I walked off that stage and my phone was already exploding. My mother, my friends, people I haven't spoken to in years asking if it's true, asking who I am. Jungkook's anger falters. I didn't mean to drag you out like that. But you did, Jimin says, voice cracking. You sang my name without saying it. Jungkook's eyes darken, because I was tired of whispering it in my head. The van slows, stopping at a red light. Neon bleeds through the windows, painting their faces in bruised colors. You know what scared me the most? Jimin asks suddenly. Not the rumors, not the backlash, he swallows. It was how relieved I felt. Jungkook's breath catches. Relieved? Yes, Jimin says, finally meeting his eyes. Because for 3 minutes I didn't have to pretend, and that terrified me. Jungkook shifts closer, his voice barely audible. You don't have to pretend with me. That's the problem, Jimin says. With you, I never could. The van starts moving again. Jungkook reaches out, then hesitates, fingers hovering between them. Tell me to stop, he says. Jimin stares at his hand like it's a loaded weapon. If I do, he whispers, will you actually listen? Jungkook pulls his hand back slowly. Yes. The honesty in that answer breaks something open. Jimin leans back, head against the window. I spent years convincing myself this was a phase, he admits. That whatever I felt for you was just closeness, just comfort. And now, Jungkook asks. And now you sang it out loud, Jimin says, and I can't lie to myself anymore. They arrive at the building too quickly. The doors open, letting in cold night air and the distant sound of waiting cameras. Security ushers them inside fast, but not before flashes go off, sharp and blinding. Inside the elevator, the tension snaps. Jimin presses the button harder than necessary. They're outside, he says. They know. They suspect, Jungkook replies. That's worse, Jimin says. Suspicion eats people alive. The elevator hums upward. Jungkook steps closer, crowding Jimin against the wall without touching him. Look at me, he says, not them. Jimin's breath stutters as he lifts his gaze. The space is too small. Jungkook smells like sweat and metal, and something familiar that makes Jimin's chest ache. You did this, Jimin whispers. I know, Jungkook says, and I'd do it again. Jimin's hand slams flat against Jungkook's chest, right over his heart. You don't get to decide that alone. Then decide with me, Jungkook fires back. Tell me you want me to disappear and I will. Tell me this was a mistake and I'll bury it so deep no one ever finds it again. Jimin's eyes fill, furious tears threatening to spill. That's not fair. Neither was loving you quietly, Jungkook says. The elevator dings. The doors slide open, but neither of them moves. Jimin's voice drops to a raw whisper. I don't want you to disappear. Jungkook's breath hitches. Say it clearly. I don't want you to bury it, Jimin continues. His voice breaks. I need to know you won't leave me alone in the fallout. Jungkook reaches up slowly, cupping Jimin's cheek, thumb brushing away a tear before it can fall. I'm already in it, he says, with you. Jimin closes his eyes, leaning into the touch despite himself. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to breath and skin and unspoken truth. Then a shout echoes down the hallway. They're asking questions, right now. Reality crashes back in. Jimin pulls away, wiping his face, armor snapping back into place even as it cracks. "This isn't over," he says. Jungkook nods, eyes burning. "It's just started." As they step out into the hallway together, cameras waiting on the other side of the door, Jimin realizes something terrifying and undeniable. For the first time, he's not sure which frightens him more, being exposed to the world, or the fact that he no longer wants to hide from Jungkook at all.
The interview room was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. White walls, a single table, 2 chairs facing an unseen audience behind dark glass. The red recording light blinked on, merciless. Jimin sat straight, hands folded tightly in his lap. Jungkook sat beside him, close enough that their knees almost touched, close enough to feel each other's tension. The host's voice came through the speaker, calm and sharp. Millions watched that moment. Some call it brave, others call it reckless. "So tell us, what really happened on that stage?" Jimin inhaled slowly. Jungkook felt it, the subtle tremor, and spoke first. "The truth happened," he said, "and it didn't wait for permission." The host didn't miss a beat. "Was it planned?" "No," Jimin replied, voice steady but burning underneath. "If it were planned, it would have been safer. Polished. That was neither." A pause. "People believe you forced him into a confession," the host said. "That you cornered him emotionally in public." Jimin's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, Jungkook leaned forward. "I wasn't cornered," he said firmly. "I was exposed to myself." The words landed heavy. Jimin turned to him, startled. Jungkook didn't look away. "For years," Jungkook continued, "I chose silence because it protected my image, not my humanity." Jimin didn't force anything. He stopped protecting my lie. The host shifted. "And you, Jimin, do you regret it?" Jimin stared straight ahead. "I regret waiting so long to value my own voice," he said. "I regret shrinking myself so someone else could stay comfortable." The silence that followed was deafening. After the cameras shut off, the fallout was immediate. Sponsors pulled back. Meetings were canceled. Support flooded in alongside hate, so sharp it felt physical. In the car afterward, Jungkook stared at his phone, reading a message twice before handing it to Jimin. "They want me to clarify," he said. "Privately. Alone." Jimin didn't look at the phone. And imply you were emotional," Jungkook said. "That I misunderstood." Jimin finally met his eyes. "You don't have to say no for me." Jungkook's voice dropped. "I'm saying no for myself." That night, tension snapped. In the quiet of the apartment, Jimin paced, agitation bleeding through every movement. "You're burning bridges you can't rebuild," he said. "And part of me is terrified that one day you'll wake up and blame me." Jungkook turned sharply. "Why do you keep assuming I'm weak?" he asked. "Why do you keep bracing for my betrayal?" "Because I've lived inside it," Jimin shot back. "Because loving you meant waiting for you to choose everything else first." The words struck deep. Jungkook stepped closer, voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I am choosing now. Why can't you see that?" "Because choosing once doesn't undo years," Jimin replied. "Because trust doesn't reset just because you're loud about it." Jungkook's eyes burned. "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to stop making bravery a performance," Jimin said. "I want consistency when no one's clapping." The fight dissolved into silence, heavy and exhausted. Jungkook sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know how to prove it without losing everything," he admitted. Jimin sat beside him, voice softer but no less intense. "Then lose the things that made you afraid to love honestly." Jungkook looked up slowly. "And if that includes the version of me the world fell in love with?" Jimin didn't hesitate. "Then let them mourn him. I love the one you hid." The confession cracked something open. Jungkook laughed quietly, broken and relieved. "I spent my life being who they needed," he said. "I don't know who I am without that." "Then find out," Jimin replied. "With me, or without me. But don't ask me to disappear again while you decide." Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand, gripping it hard, grounding. "Stay," he said, "even if I stumble." Jimin squeezed back, eyes wet but unwavering. "I'm not leaving," he said, "but I'm done waiting in the shadows." Days passed in tension and transformation. Jungkook declined a solo appearance. Jimin released a statement in his own words, unfiltered, unapologetic. The industry shook. Fans argued. Doors closed. Others opened quietly. One evening, as rain traced lines down the window, Jungkook spoke into the silence. "I'm scared," he admitted. "But for the first time, it feels like the right kind." Jimin leaned his head against Jungkook's shoulder. "Fear doesn't mean stop," he said. "It means you finally care enough to feel." They sat there, not fixed, not healed, but real. The world outside still roared, still judged, still demanded neat endings. Inside, they didn't offer one. They chose something far more dangerous. Truth that stayed.
The night after the statement feels heavier than all the nights before it. Jimin stands alone on the hotel balcony, the city spread out beneath him like a living organism that never sleeps, never forgives. The air is cold, sharp against his skin, and he welcomes it because it keeps him present, keeps him from drifting back into the fear that's been circling his chest for days. Behind him, the sliding door opens softly. "You're going to catch a cold," Jungkook says. Jimin doesn't turn. "I just needed to breathe somewhere that doesn't have opinions." Jungkook steps beside him, resting his arms on the railing close enough that their shoulders almost touch. Almost. "The world's loud tonight," he says. Jimin lets out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Tonight, it's always been loud. I just stopped pretending I couldn't hear it." They stand in silence for a moment, the city humming below them. Jimin's fingers curl around the railing, knuckles pale. "I'm still scared," Jimin admits. "I don't think that ever really goes away." Jungkook nods. "I don't want it to. Fear means we care." Jimin finally turns to look at him. Jungkook looks exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders heavy. But there's a steadiness there that wasn't before, something unshakable. "You didn't have to stay," Jimin says quietly. "After everything." Jungkook's brows knit together. "That was never a question." Jimin swallows, emotion tightening his throat. "You know what hurts the most?" he asks. "Not the rumors, not the backlash. It's realizing how much of myself I locked away because I thought I had to." Jungkook watches him carefully. "And now?" "And now I don't know how to go back," Jimin says. "And I don't think I want to." Jungkook exhales, relief flickering across his face. "Good, because I don't think I could pretend again, not after seeing you like this. Real." Jimin's lips tremble into a small smile. "You always liked pushing me off cliffs." "I just trusted you could fly," Jungkook replies softly. The words settle between them, warm and dangerous and true. Jimin reaches out slowly, hesitating for only a second before taking Jungkook's hand. There's no audience here, no cameras, no narrative to manage. Just skin against skin and the quiet certainty of choice. "If this is the life we chose," Jimin says, voice steady despite the emotion rising in his chest, "it won't be easy." Jungkook tightens his grip. "I know." "There will be days I want to run," Jimin continues. "Days I'm angry, days I'm afraid I'm not strong enough." Jungkook steps closer. "Then I'll stay on those days too." Jimin laughs softly, tears gathering again. "You're stubborn." "I learned from you," Jungkook says. Jimin leans forward, resting his forehead against Jungkook, the familiar closeness grounding him. "You sang my truth before I was ready to hear it," he whispers. "But I'm glad you did." Jungkook's voice is rough. "I was terrified you'd hate me." "I did," Jimin admits, "for about 5 minutes." Jungkook lets out a breathy laugh. "Only 5. "Then I realized something," Jimin says. "I wasn't breaking, I was waking up." They stand there as the city lights flicker, as the world continues to debate and analyze and argue somewhere far away. None of it reaches them here. Inside, Jimin feels something unfamiliar but solid take root. Not certainty, not safety, but honesty. The kind that doesn't promise protection, only presence. When they finally go back inside, hands still linked, Jimin knows the road ahead will be messy and loud and unforgiving. But for the first time in his life, he isn't choosing silence to survive. He's choosing love. And Jungkook, standing beside him without hesitation, makes that choice feel less like a risk and more like coming home.